Sex and race, because they are easy, visible differences, have been the primary ways of organizing human beings into superior and inferior groups, and into the cheap labor on which this system still depends.
Freedom is merely privilege extended, unless enjoyed by one and all.
Hello, and welcome to Rainbow Shelter News. I am your host, as always, Osman the Dark, with the super white person with blue eyes, brown hair, and a far too white background. And tonight there's a surprising amount of transphobia and homophobia. I should have mentioned the homophobia too. However, I didn't think in the title. Which, I mean, it is what it is. So, start off with the heavier stuff, and also hi, Jinx Tiamat. Trees indeed. I managed to sort things out for the most part on time. I might have more links than I should for this. I might have more links than actually show up in the news show. Sort of same story, different sources type thing. I usually try to pick what I think is the best source. But so a champion throughout his whole life, Manitoba disability rights activist Jim Dirksen dies at 75. One of the founding member of the Council of Canadians with Disabilities and the Manitoba League of Persons with Disabilities, died earlier this month at the age of 75, marking the end of a life filled with tireless activism. He's a wheelchair user, ended up using a wheelchair because of polio, which not uncommon. I mean, that's the reason my grandmother had to use her. Jim was champion throughout his whole life, and he convinced many that our challenge is creating more inclusive and accessible communities. And he did so with great passion, with great knowledge, and gentle firmness. Oh wow, yeah, cute Bumblebee. That is a classic turf talking point. The you know, they can always tell talking point. And some do that where they walk back their statements because of I guess feminine grace and aura and you look pretty, but some if the person's openly trans, some people are like, you know, it doesn't matter if they have like perfect hairline or incredibly pretty, they're just like, someone's just full out lying and are like, oh, you have like a terrible hairline, it's all the way up, you're practically bald, and the person has like beautiful hair. Yeah, it's turfs are a strange bunch, and by strange I mean they are people in a very culty situation that was formed largely due to influences of an ex-nun. but yeah, with gentle firmness that brought people on side to create changes that were necessary. So it always sucks to have an advocate or a person who's genuinely advocating for change and making change. Die. I mean, old age is also. So, ex-prison guard allegedly pushed lesbian into fire and strangled her while calling her a slave. A district attorney offered a plea that could have let him off without prison. The judge said no. So, Desiree Casa, a 31-year-old and out lesbian, found herself alone around a fire pit at her home in Green Bay, Wisconsin, with prison guard Shane Nolan. Casa's sister had met Nolan 30. About a half hour later, according to Casa, with the rest of the group elsewhere, she offered Nolan here. He accepted. That's when he stood up, called her a homophobic slur, grabbed her by the torso from her chair, and threw her into the fire. According to charging documents filed by Brown County District Attorney, Koss crawled from the fire pit and began fighting back against, drawing the attention of others. Koss's sister rushed Nolan, knocking him to the ground and punching him. Nolan lunged for Koss's throat, choking her as they struggled. Oh, your boyfriend's first pickup line he ever told you was, entire wars have been fought over women half as beautiful as you? That is a pickup line. That is a good... That is an amazing pickup line. A man shot gay teen 8 times after they agreed to have oral sex in the woods outside a library. Kansas City, Missouri man pleaded guilty to federal hate crime charges after shooting and nearly killing a teenage boy because of sexual orientation. According to the plea, Robinson encountered the Kansas City Public Library on May 29th, 2019. Was approached him and asked to connect via Facebook. The two began a conversation over Facebook Messenger, in which MS asks about Robin's sexual orientation, suggests they meet in the library bathroom to engage in a sexual act. Robinson told MS that he was not gay, but they outside the library to sex in exchange for $5. At the same time, Robinson was telling his girlfriend about the interaction, sending screenshots. He tries to in front of Robinson, but his friend might shoot this boy if he tries some. MS turned to leave before a sex act occurred or any money was exchanged. That's when Robinson pulled his gun and yeah. Jinx team, that's a damn near mythical pickup line. Nice. Yeah, no, that's an amazing yeah. Trans woman sues after 5 male police officers watched her take a shower because most cops are bastards, if not all cops, but the system is set up to enforce bastard. Do you think the new Overlord OP is a banger? I don't know what you mean by Overlord OP. I don't know what game you're talking about. So, in Colorado, trans women face a humiliating body cavity search at the hands of the El Paso County Sheriff's Office in 2020 when she was arrested during a George Floyd protest. requested a female deputy to conduct the search, but was denied. The female deputy conducted the search on McGinn's upper body, but the male deputy conducted the rest of the search. Then, when she was made to take a shower, 5 male deputies watched the body cavity search and McGinn showering, laughing at her as she... Yeah, no, that sounds about right. Overlord opening anime. I haven't watched that. I've been bad at keeping up with anime. Like, I'm sorry. Corvo. I'm sorry about that. I used to keep up with anime a lot more. I'm behind on JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I'm behind on My Hero Academia. I'm sure there are other shows that I need to catch up on. I've been trying to make sure I watch all the because I used to read a bunch of manhwa from was it Webtoons? But I think it's Webtoons. Whatever, the South Korean online manhwa site, and the fact that Crunchyroll has gotten Korean and Japanese stuff together is amazing. I only read trash isekai manhwa. They're all the same. I mean, fair. And people like to read that. I trashy stuff, whatever you enjoy. I'm a huge fan, I have historically have been a huge fan of what was that manhwa name? It was a manhwa with a lady who was a witch or something. It was very like fantasy based, and there was like a wizard who is in trouble. Like there's a lot of manhwa I've read since kid, but not that I didn't read a bunch of manga in the past. Trans woman sues Chick-fil-A after an employee sexually harassed and threatened to beat her up. So, when she reported the lewd sexual comments from her coworker, the franchise's owner allegedly said he'd have to investigate her if she kept reporting her harassment claims. So, you know what? You know what? I will do that very quickly because I am a sucker for people. I am so easy to convince with stuff. But first I will finish the general aspects of this story, because a coworker allegedly sexually harassed her by saying, "I would eat your A word, P word, on God, I will F word the S word out of you." The on-duty chief leader reportedly told White to share what happened with the franchise owner, Joe Engert. Engert allegedly replied by telling White it should be an honor as a trans woman that someone liked her enough to hit on her. Okay. Was it Overlord opening? Is season 4 the new opening? By the way, I should... Okay. Yes, that might be an opening. Sometimes good openings motivate me to watch certain anime. I might have to watch Overlord. I was just a fan. Look, I'm a suck. I'm also so easy to manipulate into watching stuff sometimes. So recommended for be ready for Bad Animation season 3. I mean, admittedly, I am relatively accepting of bad animation. I liked Zombieland Saga, so because there's some bad animation in season 2 of Zombieland Saga. Anyways, so 2 gay men were beaten while attackers shouted slurs. We're immediately right back into the dark stuff. And not good 3D, yeah. Yeah, so Harmony ended up with 4 stitchers after a violent attack this past Friday night at New York City, while from men who were shouting anti-gay slurs. His friend was injured as well as he tried to block attackers. They're sharing their story because they don't want to live in fear. They want others to feel empowered to stand their ground. They're staying from a smoke shop in in Brooklyn. Can't believe I said Britain there. When 2 men attacked him, these men were just infuriated with my existence. They were like, look at this. Insert slurs here, and homophobic slurs such as that. I'd seen the men in the these men in the neighborhood before, but that night they turned violent. There's been so much hate after Pride. So, trans man was beaten by 3 men for using women's restroom. He then got arrested. I know all the TERFs like to be like, they like to pretend that they want women trans men in women's bathrooms. It's really bad. Noah Ruiz was told to use the women's restroom because he's trans, but when he did, women in the restroom became upset because he's a man. Trans man in Ohio says he was beaten and later arrested for using a women's restroom, even though he was told to use the women's room because he was assigned female at birth. I was using the bathroom. She's like, who the blank is in here? I replied, I am. My girlfriend replied, I am as well. She was like, no man should be in this bathroom. Like, if you're a man, you need to use the man's bathroom. Which apparently was not the opinion of the people running the place. Explained to the woman he is trans and he's been told to use the women's bathroom by the campground owner. Exiting the bathroom where he said 3 large men attacked him, leaving him with cuts, gashes, and bruises. His mother, Jennifer, says the men repeatedly called her son an anti-gay slave. They then grabbed me off the ground, choked me out, and said, I'll kill you, you blank, doing all this. I said, dude, I'm not. I'm using the right bathroom across. The owner of this establishment told me to use this bathroom. I'm following the rules. No one was listening to him. It got admit part of his getting him screaming. He was in defense mode, and police got there. They didn't listen. So yeah, they don't actually want what they pretend to want. Well, I mean, TERFs don't want what they pretend to want, but yeah. Olympian Kim Glass details brutal attack in downtown LA. Olympic champion in indoor volleyball Kim Glass posted horrific videos detailing how she was attacked in downtown Los Angeles by a man on her Instagram page, TMZ. So, Olympian medalist Kim Glass was attacked by a man in LA who hurled a metal pipe at her head. he just looked at me with hateful eyes, and as I turned to tell my friend, I think something's like wrong, and I think he's going to hit the car. Before I knew it, a big metal bolt like pipe hit me right here. It happened so fast, I do have multiple fractures. Doctors said her vision might not get permanently damaged. Olympian gave a shout out to her family and friends for her support. On I almost did more interesting note. A more of a note about racism. So Disneyland's Instagram page flooded with racist rhetoric. The hacker identified themselves as David Dew and proceeded to use racist and homophobic slurs in a number of uploads. So the official Disneyland Instagram got hacked on July 7th. With an awful person calling himself a super hacker who is here to bring revenge upon Disneyland. Because gosh darn that Disneyland doing stuff. So the accompanying a supposed photo of quote-unquote David Dew, the hacker wrote, "I am effing tired of all these N-word Disney employees mocking me for having a small penis. Who's the tough guy now, Jerome? Get hacked, you effing F." Different F slur. The F slur, David Dew. Continued. "I am working on COVID, you N-word. Better hide before I release this new deadly virus with the help of my crew, drama alert." The hacker added in a separate post, notably tagging DJ academics at the end. It's also worth noting the photo above the caption featured a group of black men carrying a funeral casket. It didn't end there. The hacker uploaded a supposed selfie accompanied by another COVID-related caption. "Thinking about that time I invented COVID and blamed it on Wuhan because F y'all," the caption ran. In a fourth and final post, quote-unquote David Dew also wrote, "Disneyland giving all you N-words a discount." In addition to these uploads, David Dew also uploaded at least 2 Instagram stories from Disneyland account. "Kill all N-words, David Dew is here," the hacker wrote. Once the news began spreading, people began sharing their thoughts on social media. Said, "My show, mine." So California Governor Gavin Newsom, who is he's a Democrat type person, so he does good things and ignores half the bad things. So California Governor Gavin Newsom signs bill ending walking while trans law. The bill's sponsor said we shouldn't criminalize trans people and brown and black people for quite literally walking around or dressing a certain way. So, a provision of California's prostitution law referred to as quote-unquote walking while trans has been repealed in a law signed by Governor Gavin. The quote-unquote the Safer Streets for All Act was signed this past Friday, eliminating a provision of state law that prohibited loitering in a public place for the purpose of sex work. The measure, introduced last February by State Senator Scott, was passed by the state legislature in September, during a terrifying epidemic of violence against trans women of color, and we proactive with improving their safety. Still are laws should protect the LGBT color and not criminalize sex workers, trans people, and brown black people for quite literally walking around or dressing a certain way. The legislation also allows a person convicted of loitering under the defunct provision to petition for dismissal and appealing of their case. Wiener brought forth the legislation because the crime of loitering has disproportionately affected black and brown women and members of the LGBT community. Black adults accounted for 56% of loitering charges, despite making up only 10% of the population. The bill doesn't legalize prostitution, which sucks. Because prostitution should be legal, sex work should be a crime. Newsom added that his administration will be monitoring crime and prosecution trends for any possible unintended consequences, which it will act to. So, I mean, this is a good thing, but obviously there's still a lot more work left to do because they still need to get rid of what's that? They need to get rid of all the I can't think of the name of the laws. The only law I can think of is the law of surprise, and that's a very different law. That's from The Witcher, and that's about totally different things, but like, and significantly more respectful. Now what? Basically, quote unquote law to if you're happen to sleep with a trans woman, to that killing the trans person if you sentence. That's why my brain went to law of surprise, because I can't think of the name. But so a mob of conservative mothers demand library burn pride display book. Only one of the mothers filed a formal complaint about the books, but instead of her name, she wrote that she was a quote-unquote Christian taxpayer. In the Connecticut hometown of Revolutionary War hero Nathan Hale, a group of mothers, including a quote-unquote Christian taxpayer, are up in arms over the town library's pride book and are demanding the offending materials be burned. Like the Nazis. Oh wait, no, I forget. They're not taking cue from the Nazis. How could they? They are Christian taxpayers. So Booth Endemach Memorial Library Director Margaret Kahn said the incident happened June 22nd when one of the mothers removed the books from the display and the group carried them to the front desk to complain. Kahn said the woman responded with hateful language and told her the books in the display should be burned. According to Kahn, the library's collection is evaluated based on specific criteria, including relevance and representation, and materials are evaluated by respected sources, including Library Journal and the New York Times Book Review, according to the Journal Inquirer. Kahn told the group they need to follow the library procedure and file a formal request for reconsideration, explaining their concerns in writing. While library privacy guidelines prescribe naming the complaints, Kahn did reveal the woman who filled out the request identified herself on the form as a Christian taxpayer. It was unclear if the patron is a resident of Coventry. In a statement, Town Council Chairwoman Lisa Thomas said, "I stand by our library and their mission to serve each individual in our community." The hostile incident is at our public libraries, part of a disturbing trend across the country. If an adult does not want their child to have access to certain reading materials or other resources, it is up to the adult to give their child choices. Our library is a critical resource to our community and to provide information, programming, and other supports. Public libraries embrace the need of all people. While police were not called during the incident, town manager John Elsesser said, "If something similar happens again, library staff should do." Yeah. So here's Florida news. Jinx, Tiamat. 13-year-old wearing bisexual pride flag arrested at Florida pro-choice protest. I need everyone to see what Ron DeSantis, Florida, really. Video of a 13-year-old being arrested at July 4th pro-choice rally in Lakeland, Florida, went viral earlier this week. The video, filmed and shared on social media by Rain Johnson's mother, or the mother of the shows, or by a mother, shows the teen draped in a bisexual pride flag and holding a megaphone, being led away by two uniformed police officers and loaded into a police vehicle. Lauren can be telling her child not to resist and assuring her that mom's right behind you. In the video, Lauren can be heard demanding to know why officers are arresting her child. According to NBC6 South Florida, Rain was charged with a second-degree misdemeanor for a noise ordinance violation related to a new law that went into effect July 1st. Gotcha. So they made a law. They were doing similar things in UK recently, with regards to trying to shut down all protests if they are a problem for people. So, U.S. was met with heartbreaking news of yet another mass shooting this week when 21-year-old white male opened fire on parade in Highland Park, Illinois. The first half of 2022 alone, the country has seen more than 300 mass shootings, which is 2 a day. 2 mass shootings a day. Still, an all too familiar response of the powers that be persists, even that surrounding such violence only grows more alarming. Below, we break down what's known about the Highland Park shooting so far, including the 7 victims who lost their lives in the latest attack. In the morning, Highland Park Sub-County, the shooter opened fire from a rooftop, hitting multiple victims and sending others running for safety. Initial statement shared by city officials, those in the area were urged to shelter in place as local police responded to the shortly after. The Lake County Sheriff's Office confirmed it was assisting Highland Park police with the response, later confirming that 6 had died as a result of the shooting. For several hours, suspect initially described as a white male between 20 years old. A 7th death was confirmed in subsequent days per CBS News, with the victim having been pronounced dead at the nearby Evanston Hospital. So 21-year-old Robert E. Crimo. Wait, is his last name Crimo? The third. Robert E. Crimo the third. That sounds like a made-up name. Is it just me? Is it just me that thinks that Robert E. Crimo the third sounds completely and totally bullshit? Was later confirmed by Lake County officials to be in custody During an initial court appearance on July 6th, Primo was denied bail. County prosecutor Ben Dillon, per Reuters, told the court during the hearing that Primo had confessed to the shooting after his arrest. Primo had been charged with 7 counts of first-degree murder. Additional charges are expected. The gun obtained legally. Similar gun to an AR-15, which is not a remarkable gun. Fired 70 rounds on the rooftop. However, it was her. So it was the nonprofit. He had been known by local authorities action prior threat. Yeah, I have no idea about gun legality. That's complicated stuff. Go away, gun legality. You don't. I mean, like, I think guns should be legal because I am that sort of American. But like, that makes me sound right wing. Not right wing. I'm just a huge fan of what the Black Panther Party did in the past, and the fact that I don't want, with the militarization of the police, people need protection from the police. I don't care. So, city honors Mississippi teen who helped save 3 people and police officer from a river. So, Corey and Evans' certificate of commendation occurred. So, hometown hero, Corey and Evans, 60-year-old Mississippi teen, honored for saving 4 lives from the Pascagoula River in Moss Point, according to WLOS. Evans was near the river on Sunday when a vehicle carrying 3 girls drove into the body of water and began to sink. The teen immediately jumped into action, removing his shirt and cell phone before diving in and helping the girls get to shore. I was like, I can't let none of these folks die. They need to get out of the water. And so I just started getting them. I didn't think about anything else. Yeah, no, that's a stereotypical hero mentality. This is like superhero type stuff as a team. Evans said he was assisted by his friend Karen Bradley, as well as Moss Point police officers Gary Mercer. At one point during the rescue efforts, Evans saw Mercer begin to struggle in the water. So he saved the police officer from drowning. This is, yeah. Good things happen. There are good people in this world. Derek Chauvin sentenced to more than 20 years in prison for violating George Floyd's civil rights. So Derek Chauvin's sentence had been reduced a few weeks ago, and now they're adding 20 years onto it, which, I mean, Derek Chauvin spent infinity plus 1 years in jail. I am judge sentenced former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin to more than 20 years in federal prison for violating George Floyd's civil rights. Chauvin pleaded guilty to the charges in December and was ordered to pay restitution. Chauvin agreed to the plea agreement that required him to serve a 20 to 25 year sentence that would be completed concurrently with his state conviction. Currently, and might end up with 20 years in jail. I mean, I say old. He'll be an old man when he leaves, I think. Looks. Anyways. In April 2021, a jury found Chauvin guilty in 3 counts of Floyd's death, including second-degree unintentional murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter, after pressing his knee into Floyd's neck for more than 9 minutes. During the sentencing, U.S. District Judge Paul Magnuson demanded accountability from Chauvin, saying he must be held responsible for his behavior and for ruining the lives of 3 other convicted officers. Magnuson accepted Chauvin's plea deal in May, but took 7 months off his 20-year sentence for time already served. Last year, Chauvin found guilty of the state court for murder and manslaughter charges related to Floyd's May 2020 death and sentenced 22 and a half years. So, more importantly, apparently, there is a way to find free and accessible bathrooms in New York City. So, there are fewer than 1,200 public bathrooms for the city's 8.4 million residents and millions of tourists, according to the nonprofit Urban Design Forum. This bathroom deficit was exacerbated during the pandemic lockdowns, leading to the city council to make change in the plumbing code that require businesses to open up their restrooms to the public. The change hinged on City Hall's interpretation of what the public ultimately, Mayor Eric Adams' administration decided the change would not actually require businesses to open up their restrooms to non-patrons. Earlier in the year, there's a bill to require the mayor office to propose at least 1 public bathroom location per zip code by first 2020. For New Yorkers who know where they can find a free and accessible bathroom right now, their option. Got to the number 2 go New York City, NYC, sorry. It's a TikTok and Instagram account that rates and highlights free accessible bathrooms in the city. And I don't know, not all the bathrooms are even accessible, but yeah, it's not all the free bathrooms are accessible. So 1,200 bathrooms, 1,200, there are fewer than 1,200 public restrooms, and not all of them are accessible, which sounds like the general attitude of a lot of places. So, 10-year-old rape victim receives abortion in Indiana after being denied access in Ohio. A 10-year-old rape victim who's 6 weeks pregnant received an abortion in Indiana after being denied access in her home state of Ohio. According to The Guardian, the young girl's story came to public attention just 3 days after the overturning of Roe v. Wade by the Supreme Court in June 24. The overturning of the Supreme Court case pushed Ohio's 6-week trigger ban into effect. According to People, the 10-year-old's pregnancy was terminated by an obstetrician gynecologist in Indiana. Bernard's help was requested by a child abuse doctor from Ohio, and although her assistance proved to be successful in this instance, she worries that the state of Indiana will soon ban abortions there as well. Hard to imagine that in a few short weeks we'll have no ability to provide that care. The doctor told this in the Inquirer. The Indiana General Assembly is scheduled to convene for a special session on July 25th to discuss abortion restrictions and inflation. according to the Cincinnati Inquirer, Indiana-based abortion providers have been receiving an influx of out-of-state patients, with appointments soaring from 5 to 8 patients per day to 20 per day. Republican Governor of South Dakota, Kristi Noem, shared her thoughts on the 10-year-old child situation at CNN's State of the Union event. Noem shared that she believes it's quote-unquote incredible that quote-unquote nobody's talking about the pervert, horrible, and deranged individual that raped a 10-year-old. Much as we talk about what we can do for the little girl, I think we also need to be addressing those sick individuals who do to our children. What I would say is I don't believe a tragic situation should be perpetuated by another tragedy. And so there's more that we have to make sure that we're living in living a life that says every life is precious, especially innocent lives that have been shattered like that 10-year-old. According to The Guardian, abortions are now a criminal act in South Dakota. Rape and incest are no exception under the current South Dakota law. Because, of course, why fix a problem? They talk about how bad a problem is and do nothing to fix it. President of Black Wall Street Chamber of Commerce and her husband died recently. Sherry Von Smith, president of Black Wall Street Chamber of Commerce, died at her Oklahoma home. Police said the incident seemed domestic in nature, but they have not publicly referred any further information in an ongoing investigation. Her husband was in critical condition, later died in the hospital. So that happened. 2 police officers shot during Philadelphia July 4th fireworks show. I heard about this. I haven't actually read much info. 2 police officers were shot and injured during a July 4th celebration in Philadelphia. Both officers were taken to a local hospital and are in stable condition. Video from the shooting shows thousands of people fleeing the scene, which unfolded in city's Fairmount Street Art Museum area. Fireworks can be seen going off in the background. I didn't hear the shots, but the cops were like, "Run, run, run," a woman told Philly NBC. Per NBC News, no one is currently in custody. The shooting was hours after a mass shooting took place in a Chicago suburb of Highland Park, which resulted in the death of 5 people and at over 30 suspect has since been arrested. I assume they're talking about the Highland Park shooting, which we had gone over. Right, so on a lighter note, driving HOV lane argues unborn child should count as a second person. So, people have been telling her to get an abortion based on her decision is the overturning of Roe v. Wade to fight a traffic ticket. She told TMZ that the hate mail has been triggering, so she's stopped reading anything to do with her story. So a pregnant woman from Plano, Texas, who got a ticket for driving in an HOV lane, argued that her unborn child should count as a second person following the overturning of Roe v. Wade. As NBC 5 Dallas Fort Worth reported, this person was driving alone on US Highway 75 to pick up her son on June 29th. She took an HOV lane to avoid being late, but she was later pulled over by a patrol officer after she attempted to exit the expressway. In order to use these lanes, the individual driving must be accompanied by at least one other passenger. Following the overturning of Wade, she argued that the $275 ticket should count because she's 34 weeks pregnant. He started peeking around. He's like, "It's just you?" And I said, "No, there's 2 of us." And he said, well, where's the other person?" "Right here," and pointed to her stomach. However, the officer said their unborn child does not count, even though Texas Penal Code currently recognizes an unborn child as a person, As it stands, Texas Transportation Code does not recognize a fetus as a person. Ticket is planned to be fought in court. Yeah, how could this be fair? According to the new law, this is a life. Yeah. Transphobia. So, back to the tragedy at Uvalde. Uvalde officers supervisor, well, tragedy and frustrating. Police are the worst. So, Uvalde officers supervisor reportedly failed to respond to requests to shoot gunmen before he entered the. So, Uvalde, Texas police officer, situated by Robb Elementary School, reportedly requested permission to shoot the gunman before he entered the school. Per the Texas Tribune, the officer asked a supervisor for the go-ahead to shoot 18-year-old Salvador Ramos before the latter got inside the school building. The supervisor did not respond to the request or responded too late, according to the report from the Advanced Law Enforcement Rapid Response Training Center in San Marcos. The officer was situated outside the school approximately a minute before Ramos went inside, where he killed 19 young children and 2. The officer also expressed concern that they could accidentally shoot a child in an attempt to stop the gunman. Had opened fire before gaining entry to the reasonable officer would conclude in this case, based on the totality of circumstances, that the use of deadly force is warranted. Reads the report. It also refers to the Texas Penal Code that use of deadly force is justified if the individual's belief it could prevent a murder. And there are tons of failing. So the police talk about their necessity for protection, but don't do anything with it. Because Wisconsin can't stop being racist, the Wisconsin Supreme Court limits the use of absentee ballot drop box. Racist and ableist, I should say. The decision is a defeat for Democrats in the battleground state who say the ruling makes it harder for many to vote. The Supreme Court of the U.S. state of Wisconsin has ruled that absentee ballot drop boxes may be placed only in election offices and that no one other than the voter can return ballot in person in a decision Democrats said would make it hard to vote in Wisconsin. And given the Supreme Court rulings, it's not like this. It's not like this would be shot down with court. So the court's decision on Friday did not address whether anyone other than the voter can return their own ballot by mail. That means that anyone could still collect multiple ballots for voters and, instead of using Dropbox, put them in the mail. Republicans have argued that practice known as ballot harvesting is rife with fraud, although there have been no evidence of it happening in Wisconsin. Democrats and others argue that many voters, especially elderly and disabled, have difficulty returning their ballots without the assistance of others. Supporters have argued drop boxes are a better option than mailing ballots because they go directly to the clerks and can't be lost or delayed in transit. Just name events of the August 9th primary midterm election, where Republican U.S. Senator Ron Johnson and Democratic Governor Tony Evers are seeking re-election. The court's 4-3 ruling also has critical implications in the 2024 presidential race, in which Wisconsin, again, among battleground states. The right to vote is at the heart of democracy. It should be easier for eligible Wisconsinites to vote, not harder. Evers. Decision will have disproportionate effect on disadvantaged voters, which is the point, generally. Apologize for that. I should have had more sleep, although I did also would not have sorted out the stories as well with less. So, Macy Gray decided to spew transphobia. Just because you go change your parts doesn't make you a woman. Because of course, can't go without transphobia. Singer Macy Gray made some controversial remarks on Piers Morgan Uncensored regarding the trans community, according to The Independent. In an interview with Piers Morgan, conservative jerkwad, on July 4th, Macy Gray elaborated on the ideas she espouses. I will say this, and everyone's gonna hate me, but as a woman, just because you go change your parts doesn't make you a woman. Sorry, the 4-year-old singer said, according to The Independent. She expounded on her position, saying she supports trans rights for quote-unquote fairness and equality, but draws the line at trans women competing against cis women in sports because of their quote-unquote superior physical bodies, according to Entertainment Weekly. Wait, does that... I swear I had to get my former partner to open pickle jars because I could never open. Like, even before HRT, like, I could never. Like, I mean, like, I can now that I've exercised more, but like I couldn't for a while, and yeah. Yes, I do eat pickles on rare occasions. I'm not like a huge fan of pickles. Just, I feel like I had pickles more in the past. Gray says her views are rooted in her experience from being a little girl and growing into a woman. And that achieving womanhood is a journey that should be lived from the beginning of one's life, because no way a journey matters. No way a journey matters. I can't just... Apparently, people... I just... Yeah. Surgery or finding yourself doesn't change that. Being a little girl is a whole epic book, you know, and you can't have that just because you want to be Morgan, adding that she quote-unquote doesn't think you should be transphobic just because you don't agree. Well, I mean, if you're spouting discriminatory practices, that is how you get labeled transphobic. Not simply, it's not agreeing that people should live with decent human rights. Anyways, if you want me to call you a her, I will, because that's what you want, but that doesn't mean when I call you a her, and just because you got a surgery. Her is a pronoun, so it's so weird. Call you a... yeah, that's weird. If, like, adding a before it feels weird, but with pronouns. So, critics include the music festival Mighty Hoopla, where the quote-unquote I Try singer performed in June, condemned her statements about the trans community. We're extremely disappointed by the comments made by Macy Gray on Piers Morgan's Uncensored Talk TV. The festival wrote in an official statement, according to MSN. As an artist at our 2022 event, we would like to make it clear that we do not agree with the insensitive and transphobic statements she made. Mighty Hoopla said that trans people and their bodies are not up for debate, and cis TV personalities and the channels that hire them need to stop discussing them on air. They concluded their message of solidarity, adding, "The Mighty Hoopla will always stand with our trans family." Morgan's talking about vicious trans mob. Yes, the vicious trans mob hiding in our places. Okay. So, apparently Border Patrol agents want to be cowboys, the racist kind. So, Border Patrol agents face discipline after using unnecessary force against migrants. Because Border Patrol agents were placed on administrative duties after being involved in an aggressive confrontation with Haitian migrants near Del Rio, Texas. U.S. Customs and Border Protection announced its decision Friday after completing a months-long investigation of the incident, which attracted national attention. So basically, it got noticed. So they did something. According to CNN, Customs and Border Patrol's Office of Professional Responsibility released a 511-page report saying they didn't find evidence to prove that Border Patrol agents struck migrant with their rein, but there was an unnecessary use. Her other popular song is literally all about adult toys. Yeah, I don't know, but like, yeah, she appears to be spouting positions similar to a lot of trans radical feminists. So, in viral photos seen in September, the agents appear to be swinging long reins near migrants because they want to feel like they're whipping black people. President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris condemned the agents, particularly expressing outrage with the video that showed an officer's horse nearly charging into one of the migrants who fell into the water. "It's horrible what you saw," Biden said at the time, according to CNN. "I promise you, those people will pay. There's an investigation underway now, and there will be consequences." I wonder if that was for the 511-page report. I wonder if Biden was just like, "Oh, there will be consequences," and the report doesn't agree with the video evidence that Border Patrols were attacking migrants with their rein, because apparently they need horses. I don't know why. Like I said, they want to be cowboys, but like they want back in the 1800s. So, failure to maintain command and control over horse patrol units, lack of appropriate policies and training, overall chaotic nature of the situation at Del Rio at the time contributed to the incident, Magnus. Magnus says there are failures to make good decisions at multiple levels of the several agents engaged in unprofessional and dangerous behavior, including one instance which an agent used denigrating and offensive language, i.e. probably the N-word. given how much they want to act like slave owners whipping black slaves. It would not surprise me if a Border Patrol agent used the N-word. That's what they're referring to. According to the report, one Border Patrol agent acted in an unprofessional manner by yelling comments related to migrants' national origin and sex. Hey, your woman, that's why your country is us. Your woman for this, agent said. According to the report, Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas released a statement to defend the reputation of U.S. Border Patrol despite the controversial incident. Yeah, I don't believe. I don't believe much in internal investigation anywhere. They don't result in reality. They usually involve lessened sense. So, during Pride Month, there is a lot of anti-LGBTQ fake news on Facebook and Instagram, which makes sense because they're connected now, that they would use both. So, Facebook and Instagram both allowed anti-LGBT sentiment and misinformation to proliferate despite claiming to support the LGBTQ community during Pride Month. As corporations do, they like to wave a flag, make their profile a little bit more rainbowy, and support anti-LGBT policy. According to a pair of Media Matters reports released, both social media platforms are owned by Meta, which publicly promotes its platforms as safe places for LGBTQ users, not factoring in the anti-LGBTQ hate, apparently. Facebook enabled right-wing media to amplify anti-LGBT lies during Pride Month. According to Media Matters, the Progressive Media Watchdog Group found that during the month of June, right-leaning pages posted about LGBTQ and Pride nearly 3,500 times and earned just under 4 million interactions. Somehow that still feels small, but doesn't stop it from being bad. 4 million, 1% of the population of America. And America is, I think, the one mainly using Facebook and Instagram. Facebook and its parent company Meta had eagerly promoted Pride Month, according to adding Pride features on the platform, claiming to amplify LGBT creators and reiterating the company's supposed commitment to supporting LGBTQ people and to eliminate hate speech targeting them. But Facebook has regularly failed to remove the dangerous and dehumanizing hate speech and misinformation targeting LGBTQ people from which is coming from right-wing outlets, figures, and groups. And this Pride Month, under Facebook's watch, posts that amplify long-standing, baseless, and dangerous rhetoric about the LGBT community proliferated across the platform. The report found pages run by right-wing media outlets The Blaze, Western Journal, and The Daily Wire, which regularly exploit Facebook's algorithm, spread lies and fear-mongering posts about pride events and LGBT people, quote-unquote, grooming children. Similar anti-LGBT posts about pride were also found all over right-wing Facebook groups, both public and private. Instagram, meanwhile, allowed accounts with tens of thousands of followers to target the LGBT community with hate speech, harassment, and bullying. During Pride Month, Meta announced it was, quote-unquote, celebrating Pride by launching Pride-themed stickers and avatars, a global LGBTQ plus cultural guide, and an LGBT plus safety hub. The report on Instagram reads, despite Meta's newly announced resources, Instagram has allowed its users to spread propaganda against LGBTQ community, and even against the same individuals it's publicly celebrating. In several cases, these are accounts dedicated to targeting LGBT people, while in others, these are accounts of right-wing media outlets and personalities who also push anti-LGBT rhetoric. Many of these posts seem to violate Meta's policy. Media Matters tracked a number of right-wing accounts on Instagram, including Libs of TikTok. I did not know Libs of TikTok was also on Instagram. I was mostly aware of it on Twitter. I think it's been kicked off Twitter. Maybe. Let me quick check. Nope, it is not kicked off Twitter. I do not. I'm not. In person, various social media platforms for posting anti-gay propaganda, encouraging followers to harass LGBT. That have been allowed to post homophobic memes and disinformation to their hundreds of thousands of followers. Million followers. Not Instagram. Twitter. So, pride events targeted by extremist groups. While some queer units are profitable for Instagram, especially during June, its ongoing failure to address accounts actively spreading harmful rhetoric against the LGBT community make the platform's happy pride messaging hollow. And that's true for most corporations. Since they rarely care about what they say. So, far right falsely says that Highland Park shooter is trans to stop gun control push. It's another reminder I feel like is necessary to mention earlier this week, Robert Dean Crimo III. That's probably not how the last name is pronounced, but I will not stop pronouncing Crimo. I mean, it fits the circumstance. Anyways, opened fire on a July 4th parade in Chicago suburb of Highland Park, killing 7 people and injuring at least 46 others. There's no reason that he's trans, but like other cis male mass shooters, elements of the far right are saying he's trans in an effort to blame trans identity for mass shootings and take the heat off of guns. Alleged image of Highland Park trans or shooter leaving the Christian American nationalist online personality Lauren Witzke wrote on the conservative social media app Telegram with a picture of Crimo. I assume they mean a conservative social media group on Telegram. But anyways, Highland Park quote unquote Highland Park transler shooter is how white nationalist and Joseph Guione referred to Crimo in a post on Telegram. Failed Floridian congressional candidate Laura Loomer. Don't remember Laura Loomer. Brought up Crimo along with Salvador in Uvalde, Texas. Killed 19 children and 2 years. Ramos also says that the right 7 and even several Republican members of Congress spread false information. They opened fire as a result of the trans. So in other words, both the Uvalde and Park shooters were men who liked wearing women's clothing. Loomer wrote on a social media platform, getting over 100 likes. Looks like the trans movement is radicalizing mass. Don't need gun control. That's. I hate liars like this. Shortly after the Uvalde shooting, in May, Representative Paul Gosar and Marjorie Taylor Greene, along with Las Vegas City Council member Michelle Fiore, said that the shooter was trans, into cross-dressing, or transgendering. Oh, those transgendering days that I have been in. Green and Fiore made their comments while trying to downplay the role of the shooter's access to guns in the shooting. The phenomenon appears to be recent, but an outgrowth of the right's increasing obsession and fear of trans equality. But in 2018, quote-unquote gender-critical activists, TERFs, or people using language feminism to attack trans people, claimed that the YouTube shooter Nassim Najafi Agdam is trans, even though there's no reason to believe that she's trans. She opened fire on YouTube's headquarters in California with a semi-automatic handgun shooting. They say the shooter woman would never do such a thing. They're not actually female. Wrote one person on Twitter in a now deleted post. Ugh. So, why people in the WNBA sometimes play for Russia? A breakdown of the gender pay gap in the WNBA and so this is during Brittany Griner is still stuck in Russia. The Russian entertainment of WNBA Phoenix Mercury center Brittany Griner has made national headlines since she was taken into custody back in February. The WNBA superstar and two-time Olympic gold medalist was detained in Russia after customs allegedly found vape cartridges containing hash oil in her luggage. If convicted, the basketball star could face up to 10 years in prison. I believe she has pleaded guilty. I could just to. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of situations where plead guilty looks like the only option. Definitely, with Griner being in a different country and all this stuff. Yeah. Oh, there we go. With the latest developments surrounding her guilty plea and Joe Biden assuring her return. Whether or not Joe Biden will do anything about it, only Joe Biden knows. There has been an outpouring of support for Griner from fans and fellow athletes, all hoping the WNBA star makes it back home and in good health. But many may be wondering is what would compel an openly gay black American woman to go to a country that is known for not being especially tolerant? The answer was she was playing there because she plays for the Russian team during the US offseason, which many WNBA players do to supplement their incomes. As such, the gender pay gap in sports cannot be. The reality is she's over there because of a gender issue, pay in. We go there to supplement our incomes, and quite frankly, we go over there to maintain. Griner has played in Russia for the last 7 years, earning over $1 million per season. That's more than quadruple her WNBA salary, which means her WNBA salary of a two-time gold medalist was $250,000. While public perception of professional basketball players is they're well-off multimillionaires, the reality is that for women professional league, the pay is significantly modest. Griner's ordeal has started to reopen the conversation about the gross pay disparity So the average NBA player earns $5.3 million a year. By comparison, the average WNBA player earns an average of $130,000 a year. So middle class wages. This means the average NBA player makes 41 times what the average WNBA. Players earn vastly more, such as Steph Curry and Russell Westbrook, who make $48 million and $7 million. By stark contrast, highest paid WNBA players, 22, Diana Taurasi, Jewel Lloyd, and Brianna Stewart earned $228,000. Different media coverage and sponsorship fueled the pay divide. Most sports or highlight shows are made up entirely of men's sports. 95% of total television coverage goes to ESPN highlight show and focus on men's sports. Media tends to perpetuate gender stereotypes and coverage of women. The lack of authentic coverage that women in sports may be affecting the number of endorsements at corporate sponsorships there. It also affect the dollar. So the WNBA has made some increase to their compensation of WNBA players. Most notably, players' salaries were raised by 53% after a new bargaining agreement was drafted in 2020. The newfound agreement not only increases WNBA player salary, but also allows for paid maternity leave. For the first time in WNBA, average cash compensation for players now exceeds 6 figures, reaching nearly $130,000. So the league also announced in February that it had raised $75 million from investors in effort to improve, go towards brand elevation. Basically, still huge disparity. So Raven Simone opens about living as her authentic self. My gay self saved me. Sitting down with it for an interview with Romper, former child star Raven Simone spoke about living life as her truth. I always say that my gay self saved me. Told Romper, a lot of people ask me why I didn't turn out like any of the other people in my Hollywood. As much as I attribute that to my parents, I also attribute it to the fact that the gay person on the inside of me kept saying, nope, you can't do that because I haven't lived my life yet. You have to come out before you can do it. The 36-year-old, I did not know Raven was that close to my age. I am also 30. I mean, anyways, sorry. This also expressed gratitude for people in the LGBT community and for her wife, Miranda, who supported her from the beginning. Honestly, growing up, I didn't have any person really sit in front of my face and make me comfortable enough to be. The person I always looked up to was the version of myself I knew I wanted to be. So I had to live in her more than now. I guess you could say I lived towards the person I wanted to be and found the real role models as I got older. Like Miranda and so many people. That is a very true thing in a lot of situations. So, Raven was hosting a karaoke night at West Hollywood Gay Bar back in 2020 at Miranda. The couple then married during the pandemic. Kind of cute. Since then, they've grown closer to each other. I married a gay little witch, so she married a gay little witch, said Raven. Played a young psychic witch in the sitcom That's So Raven. So we're all in it together. That's adorable. Summer and Raven are saying, busy with their youth channel 8 p.m. The couple covers a wide range of topics on the channel, including lifestyle, art, cooking, and fashion. Okay, so Raven Miranda, cute. So, more exposure of China's treatment of Uyghur Muslim exposed. So we hear from an American activist directly impacted by the action. So China has been witnessing a humanitarian crisis. More than 1 million Uyghur and other Muslim minorities are forcibly held in mass detention camps in Xinjiang province, where they face countless human rights abuses, from forced labor, coerced sterilization, the destruction of their culture and religious identity. So basically, China's doing what we're doing here, but more rounding up. So China's technically a step further, but like barely, because we do forced sterilization of immigrants. So recently, unknown hackers broke into the police servers, leaking thousands of photographs and documents that provide solid evidence. Yeah, so it seems like it's a whole thing about someone talking with relation stuff. So Dutch offer deepest apologies for role in the genocide. Defense Minister offers deepest apologies for role played by Dutch peacekeepers in Bosnia when estimated 8,000 Bosniak Muslims were massacred by Serb forces. In Netherlands, the Netherlands offered its deepest apologies that 8,000 Muslims were massacred in a particular genocide. You know, we're sorry. We're sorry we did a genocide. We're sorry. It's the first time the Dutch government has apologized to relatives of the victim. Outgunned and outnumbered, Dutch peacekeepers were unable to prevent Bosnian Serb forces from overrunning the United Nations declared safe haven in Srebrenica city at the tail end of the prison. During a week of bloodletting in July 1995, Bosniak Muslim men and boys were separated from the women and taken to execution sites where they were massacred, their bodies dumped into mass graves. Only one party is to blame for the horrific genocide: the Bosnian Serb Army. Dutch Defense Minister Kajsa Ollongren said Monday during a visit to Bosnia Herzegovina to commemorate the genocide. Let me be clear: the international community failed to offer adequate protection of Srebrenica as a part of that community. The Dutch government shares responsibility for the situation in which that failure occurred, and for this we offer our deepest. Okay. So it's not as bad. Well, maybe. Dutch courts have already determined that the Netherlands was partly responsible for the fall of Srebrenica, and compensation was paid to survivors. The Dutch government resigned over the episode in 2002, with then Prime Minister not saying that, saying the government should, the government in that way accepted its responsibility for the massacre, but not relatives of those killed did not deem this enough to and have been pushing for an official apology. Last month, now apologized to Dutch UN soldiers present at the massacre for conditions they had to serve, sparking anger from relatives. Yeah, that's typical government stuff. Death sentence, massacres, fuel protests, resentment in Ethiopia, growing frequency of violent episodes, and a perceived lackadaisical approach by the government in addressing the attacks have led to accusations of state complicity. Mass protests brought towns in Ethiopia's northern Amhara region standstill last week. Demonstrators, largely university students, took their frustration to the streets over the June 18th massacre of hundreds of civilians, rebel fighters. I can words. Protests began in the capital, Addis Ababa, on June 25th, before larger demonstrations were held in the cities of Gondar and the Amhara capital, Bahir Dar, through July 1st. Protesters denounced the killings and criticized the government's inability to curb worsening ethnic violence. I went to the demonstration because I'm sick of the violence against women and children, said Jeremy Abtamari. Sorry for terrible pronunciation. A student at Bahir Dar, who took part in protests last week. Being ethnic Amhara is becoming a death sentence in some parts of the country. Days after the protest, reports emerged of yet another mass killing of civilians in the country's Oromia region on Monday. In tragedy that triggered the protest, armed men killed hundreds of people 2 weeks ago in the Gimbi district of Oromia, some 380 kilometers west of Addis Ababa. The victims all belong to the Amhara, Ethiopia's second largest ethnic group, and witnesses say killings began in the morning and continued unabated until the rebels left at about 4 p.m. Weeks later, bereaved father Abdu Ahmed said he remains broken over the loss of his teenage daughters Hayat and Birtukan. They shot at everyone, even children and elderly, he told Al Jazeera over the phone. What kind of madman targets defenseless girls? So, at press conferences on Thursday, Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's spokesman, sorry about the terrible pronunciation, Sium, told reporters that the death toll currently stands at 338 and that fighters from the OLA, the Oromo Liberation Army, carried out the massacre. Abiy has condemned the violence, saying his government had zero tolerance for mass killings of civilians. The OLA rebel group, which has been at war with the federal army since 2019, controls parts of the region but has denied involvement in any civilian attacks. It accused Addis Ababa of deploying rogue former OLA elements to carry out June killings. Days after the massacre, smiling Abiy and dozens of other government officials were at a launch ceremony for the country's green legacy and to encourage the planting of trees for environmental purposes. State media outlets and the Prime Minister himself encouraged social media to adopt hashtags for the campaign. However, an Amharic language hashtag means red legacy in reference to the recent bloodshed outperformed it among Ethiopian TikTok and Twitter users most of last week. Social media users uploaded pictures of themselves carrying placards with the hashtag in solidarity with the protesters. Tedros Tirfe, chairman of the US-based Amhara Association of America group, believes that frustration among Ethiopians and the ethnic Amhara in particular has peaked. Abiy has demonstrated his obliviousness to the plight of Amhara early on by deeming the growing Amhara movement as a problem. As Kira, his negligence, incapacity, and complicity with the massacres have been denounced by Amharas repeatedly. Youths are protesting, demanding for PM Abiy resignation and protection for Amharas outside of the Amhara region. The United States is gravely concerned by killing Amhara community of Ethiopia this weekend, read a statement by U.S. State Department spokesman Ned Price. But years, mass killings have regularly targeted them in western Ethiopia. More than 50 civilians were slain in similar attacks that took place between February and March 2021. November 2020, gunmen ambushed and massacred at least 54 civilians after they had assembled at a school compound. The administration's incompetence to protect the security of its own citizens has so far imperiled the lives of thousands of innocent civilians. Adisu Lashitu, research fellow at the Brookings Institution, Al Jazeera. Politically, the government has failed to hold officials accountable for this monumental failure to protect the security of civilians. The direction should immediately allow an independent investigation to help bring to justice the perpetrators of this heinous act and their accomplices. The growing frequency of such episodes and a perceived lackadaisical approach by the authorities in addressing the issue has led demonstrators accusing the government of and rebel unruly triggered government protests in May. In response, security forces arrested 4,000 demonstrators across the. There's no point in sending in the military and police after we've lost all our friends and fellows. I don't care if politicians say nobody here trusts them. Yeah, that becomes several layers of okay, Berlin Mosque becomes the first to fly the rainbow flag. One of the mosque's imams said it's a safe place for people who are different, so they too can experience the spiritual side of their lives. Trans Muslims sorry, I like these signs. Trans Muslims are everywhere. Allah loves equality. Love is love. Proud gay Muslim. Imam LGBTQI Muslim support. Fighting homophobia, transphobia, Islamophobia since 1999. Background queer Muslim. But yeah, it's on July 1st. Terrible at IBN pronunciation. Rush Goethe Mosque in Berlin, Germany, unfurled the rainbow flag in front of a small audience that included the cultural senator Klaus Lederer, the German broadcaster Deutsche Welle report. According to Deutsche Welle, Mo El-Khattab, one of the 6 imams in the mosque, said that the mosque intended to be a safe place for people who are different, so they too can experience the spiritual side of their lives. Further, El-Khattab hopes that other mosques will soon follow suit. And honestly, I hope a lot more religious institutions all over the world follow suit due to the community aspect. There's this lack of community support of a lot of left-wing principles, and that would definitely add to that. Yes, things Tiamat. Yes, all the flags. Several people in attendance wore stickers saying "Love is halal," permissible in Islamic law. Displaying the rainbow flag is the most recent among the mosque's many unconventional. For example, women are not required to be in hijab, burqa, or niqab. In fact, clothing that covers full face, like the burqa or niqab, is categorically banned by the I don't know if I agree with that. Stuff should be allowed, but you shouldn't ban stuff. Further, it allows for men and women to pray together and accepts LGBT devotees. LGBT people have supported the mosque's display of the rainbow flag. Mark Eric Lumen, one of the board members of Christopher Street Day, the Berlin Pride, told Deutsche Welle that the mosque sent an quote-unquote incredibly strong sign. Queer people can also be religious and believe in God, he said. We should not just be talking about safe spaces in bars and clubs in Berlin. We also have to talk about safe spaces in the places of worship. The mosque, named after Andalusian Arabic polymath and German writer statesman Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, was founded in 2017 by Sarah Nates, a German lawyer and Muslim feminist. It claims to be the only liberal mosque in Germany. According to 5 Chicago Report, Nates founded the Goethe as a place that would be accepting of all those people who did not meet the rules and regulations of conservative. Further, the same report also mentioned the mosque approaches the Quran in a critical historical context. So it's similar to Shatikva, which I grew up in, which was founded by Rabbi Othner because she was kicked out of the previous synagogue for being an open lesbian rabbi. Anyway, while its popularity as a feminist Muslim might have grown after the opening of the mosque, it has also led to increased death threats. After the mosque opened its doors to worshippers, a state-run Islamic organization in Egypt, fuck Egypt, issued a statement that, fuck the Egyptian government, issued a statement that the mosque allowing men and women to pray together was quote-unquote incompatible with. Furthermore, The Guardian reported that Diyanet, Turkey's Muslim authority, has accused the mosque of quote-unquote depraving and ruining religion. Yeah, I am really happy. I think it'll also help curb some of the Islamic hate. So, a year after anti-LGBTQ terrorist attack, Tbilisi Pride looks ahead. Planned in the spring of 2021, I can't pronounce it. Pride, the main LGBT organization operating in the nation of Georgia, announced in early June of the year that Pride events would begin on the first day of the following month and continue for almost an entire week. This month being, of course, Disability Pride Month, but I understand their situation because Georgia, Turkey, rougher spot. So by July 6th, 2021, the same organizers were processing horrific details of a terroristic response to the capstone March for Dignity, which rained down upon the queer community, members of the media at the hands of far-right fascist political organizations and the Georgian Orthodox Church. Now, a year later, the founder of Release Pride spoke exclusively with LGBT Nation, discussed what happened that day and what life is like a year later, where the Georgian LGBT in the future. Georgi Tabagari founded Release Pride and served as first director of the group while helping organize in 2021 events, recalls making clear and despite proactive attempts by LGBT leaders in Georgia to forestall the terror which took place on 5th and 6th of July, the government was unwilling to help. The LGBT protesters were making threats throughout the entire month prior to Pride Week. Hours before the violence, 150 people injured, and what would be referred to in its aftermath as a pogrom, and an or Soviet Republic Prime Minister Irakli Garabash. I'm once again bad words outside of English and German. I followed that up later by making the outlandish claim that 95% of our population are against holding propagandistic parades, and saying the only parade I know that will be held in our country is that of our army. And taken together, the Georgian leader made his I do have hopes that the situation will be better, and is getting better since the social attitudes are improving. However, Russia is the huge challenge in the region, and the war in Ukraine is a defining moment. It is important to understand that homophobia is the tool for Russia to destabilize Georgia. Not only Georgia, most of the country's neighborhood and pro-Russian forces are on the front line with anti-LGBT policies, playing with nationalistic sentiments while polarizing society. Iran just executed a gay man. He may be the third so far this year. Article 234 of Iran's penal code punishes sexual intercourse between men with the death penalty, but the regime conceals such executions to prevent international protest. Iran executed a gay man, Iman Safavi Rad, last Wednesday on homophobic charges of sodomy. This is, by the way, where a lot of the conservative government wants America to go. This sort of thing. Rad was identified as gay by Dr. Kazem Mousavi, an Iranian dissident who spoke to the Jerusalem Post. Rad's execution took place in the Rajai Shah prison within Karaj, the capital of northeastern Aboris province. The man's execution was one of 10 that took place at the prison last week, according to the human rights activists. The other executed people had been accused of rape and murder. Iranian judicial authorities kept silent about 88% of executions, being human rights advocates to refer to them as secret executions. Article 234 of Iran's penal code punishes anal intercourse between men with whip flogging and the death penalty. But, quote unquote, the regime conceals executions of homosexuals to prevent international protests, Musavi wrote. National laws also punish male same-sex kissing with whipping. Two other suspected gay men, 32-year-old Mirad Karimpour and 29-year-old Farid Mohammadi, were hanged in January for the crime of quote-unquote forced sexual intercourse between two men involving a 16-year-old boy. The two men spent 6 years on death row before their execution. Despite the seriousness of the charges facing the execution, Shadi Amin, executive director of the Iranian LGBT advocacy group Six Wrong, told Insider rule of law and fair trials do not exist in the Iranian judicial system. And as such, any rulings issued by the system cannot be considered credible and legitimate. Peter Tatchell, the British LGBT rights activist, told the Post, in Iranian courts, defendants are routinely denied access to lawyers and defense witnesses. They can sentence after brief trials lasting as little as 20 minutes, with lawyers provided only shortly before court hearing starts. People can be found guilty without corroborating evidence. And if something like that happened in the United States, based off of Supreme Court rulings recently, you would not be able to reverse the ruling. Iraq's government proposed this law to ban homosexuality. Activists say the proposed law would allow Iraqi government to get away with murder. The Iraqi government has drafted a plan to criminalize homosexuality, according to a member of the country's parliamentary legal committee. It was agreed within the parliament to collect signatures after returning to session to legislate a law prohibiting homosexuality in Iraq. Aref al-Hamami, an MP with the State of Law Coalition, said on Friday. The legislation of such a law will be reinforced by legal provisions that prevent homosexuality and the perversions associated with it. Amir Ashur, head of the LGBT group Iraq Queer, I hope I got Amir Ashur's name right, because goddamn, Iraq Queer is the best name for an LGBTQ group in Iraq. That's so good. That is so good. Anyway, said that the proposed law would, quote unquote, allow the Iraqi government to legally get away with it. In a statement, Ashur went on to say that the Iraqi government is using their hatred for LGBT plus people to distract the public from their failure to form a government, provide basic services, and hold perpetrators accountable for different human rights violations. Ashur went on to challenge the international community to put pressure on on the Iraqi government to make sure the law is not passed. The lives of LGBT plus people and the future of the queer movement is on the line. Although homosexuality was legalized after the US-led invasion of Iraq in 2003, LGBTQ Iraqis have continued to be persecuted under the country's laws punishing quote-unquote immodest act. Human Rights reports that 11 LGBT individuals were arrested in June 2021 for quote-unquote public indecency. Probably stuff like holding hands. In 2020, political and religious leaders in Iraq condemned several embassies international organizations for flying the rainbow flag in honor of International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia, and Biphobia. In 2018, harrowing video circulated on Iraqi social media showing a popular 14-year-old Instagram influencer being brutally murdered for being perceived as gay. In a lengthy Twitter thread, Ashur detailed the gravity of the situation for Iraq's LGBT citizens. Yeah, so I mean, that shouldn't be as relatable as it is. The attitude. So, 3 Nigerian men sentenced to death by stoning for homosexuality. One of the men being sentenced is a 70-year-old man. 3 Nigerian men convicted of engaging in homosexuality have been sentenced to death by stoning by an Islamic Sharia court in the country's northern state of Bauchi. I can't. I'm terrible. The cities. The 3 men, including 70-year-old, were arrested June 14th and have allegedly confessed to the crime, according to the head of the religious in Bauchi. I keep pronouncing. Ouch. I know. I can't. I apparently can't pronounce. Probably pronounced in a much more beautiful way. But anyway, they were sentenced late last week, but can appeal within 30 days. Nigeria's same-sex marriage Prohibition Act, which was signed into law by former President Goodluck Jonathan in 2014, makes same-sex relationships punishable by up to 14 years in prison. But in the predominantly Muslim areas of northern Nigeria, Sharia courts are used to punishing crimes like adultery and blasphemy, though death penalty passed by Sharia courts must be approved by the state governor. Activists are speaking out on the wake of the sentence. Victor Emmanuel tweeted about the sentence over the weekend, expressing his frustration that it wasn't sparking more outrage. I remember that girl was burned to death by religious extremists. The whole Twitter was on fire. Now 3 men have been sentenced to death by stoning for homosexuality. All are quiet. On Monday, Nollywood actor Uche Madwagu probably slaughtering me, that came out as gay in response to the sentence. Madwagu posted an image on Instagram with the text, "I was born gay and I'm still gay and I'll forever remain gay." The message went on to decry erroneous and undemocratic Sharia law in northern Nigeria. Who had previously denied being gay, also called on President Joe Biden to sanction Nigeria for ignoring the fundamental human rights of its LGBT citizens. Yeah, I don't trust Democratic president or the Democratic Party, because the Democratic Party doesn't care. Anyways, not about justice. Advocates slam U.S. line about Abu Akleh killing. So, Biden administration handling of the killing of Al Jazeera journalist Shireen Abu Akleh has infuriated Palestinian rights activists who say Washington continues to ensure impunity for Israeli abuses, even when they target journalists and United States citizens. The U.S. Department of State announced on Monday that gunfire from Israeli positions was likely responsible for the death of Shireen Abu Akleh, but dismissed the incident as unintentional or as the unintentional quote-unquote result of tragic circumstances. Clearly, Israel, which has been defined as an apartheid state, which has done stuff Sophia, when she was still alive, she talked about she lived through apartheid. She talked about this because she was born in South Africa. She saw the stuff happening during apartheid, and she saw the similarities with what the Israeli government was, and all the Jewish activists who are being shot down because of protesting the Israeli government. All of the Jewish people who disagree with the Israeli government are being labeled as anti-Semitic or hateful, and it's just awful. The statement, and I remember the killing of that journalist. Well, the statement added that the killing of Palestinian American journalist came as Israeli forces were conducting a quote-unquote military operation against factions of Palestinian Islamic Jihad on May 11th, 2022 in Jenin, which followed a series of terrorist attacks in Israel. So, it was when there was some back and forth shooting because of the Israeli government, because the Israeli government has been slowly eating up or trying to eat up parts of Palestine for the past 30 or so years. I heard about stuff happening in the 80s and 90s, so probably like 40 years. And there was an agreement made, and Israel has not. The Israeli government, I should say, has not followed. The State Department statement was an effort to split the difference between both sides, said Youssef Munir, a Palestinian American analyst and senior fellow at the Center, Washington, D.C. Instead of coming down on the side of truth, they came down on the side of equivocation, which is a classic Democratic Party move, solidarity. They also had an opportunity to take a stand and do the right thing, but they clearly failed to do so. Advocates took issue with the timing, wording, and structure of Monday's statement. For instance, the announcement was made public on July 4th, U.S. Independence Day, a major holiday when many people are spending time with their families and not focused on the news. The statement opened with proclaiming the origin of the bullet that killed Abu Akleh was inconclusive. It was that story. After an extremely detailed forensic analysis, independent third-party examiners, as part of the process overseen by the U.S. Security Coordinator, could not reach a definitive conclusion regarding the origin of the bullet that killed Palestinian American journalist Shireen Abu Akleh. Ballistic experts determined the bullet was badly damaged, which provided a clear conclusion. State Department spokesman Ned Price stressed on Tuesday that the U.S. State Department-led office that oversees international security assistance and coordination with the Palestinian Authority did not conduct its own probe, but that its conclusion was a summation of investigations by the Palestinian Authority and Israel. Last week, the Biden administration offered to examine the bullet that killed Abu Akleh after the Palestinian Authority had refused to hand it over to Israel. Pressed on how the office was able to determine intent or lack thereof when it did not conclude its own investigation or interview the shooter, Price said, the USSC was granted access to IDF investigation, IDF being the Israeli Defense Force, just as the team was granted access to the PA investigation. So this summary of the investigation, the USSC team to to his finding that the bullet likely emanated from an IDF position, and that the tragic killing of Shireen Abu Akleh was not, in fact, intentional. He added that the conclusion was analytic, not scientific. They may not have been trying to kill that particular journalist, but many human rights organizations have been speaking out against the apartheid state of the Israeli government, which has kind of been this way since the 80s, but has ramped up worse and worse in recent years, to the point that human rights organizations are talking about. But yeah, it doesn't matter if it's intentionally targeting that single journalist, if it was a targeted attack on a Palestinian building with civilians. So many civilians were killed. But yeah. Eyewitnesses and multiple investigations by the U.S. media outlets, including CNN, The Washington Post, and Associated Press, and the New York Times, had previously concluded that Israeli forces fatally shot Abu Akleh. A probe by the Palestinian Authority also found that Abu Akleh was deliberately shot by Israeli troops after the incident. Al Jazeera Media Network accused Israeli forces of assassinating the journalist in cold blood. Investigations and video evidence show there was no armed Palestinians in the area where Abu Akleh was killed, and that she and other journalists were in identifiable press gear. Israeli forces continued to shoot in the direction of the area where Abu Akleh was standing after first injuring her colleague Ali al-Samodi. Even as no fire was being returned, Israeli bullets kept flying after Abu Akleh was killed as colleagues and bystanders attempt to retrieve her body. Still, the U.S. statement emphasized that the Israeli raid was targeting Palestinian fighters in response to past attacks by Palestinian assailants. Yeah, it's shock. Joe Biden going full middle ground. That's a shock. So on brighter. No, not brighter news. On more news, thousands march in Romania as law censoring LGBTQ looms. Romania is set to outlaw discussion of homosexuality and gender identity in public spaces. So they're going full Florida. More than 15,000 people have marched in Romanian capital Bucharest for equal rights for gender and sexual minorities, as the country's lower chamber of the parliament is set to vote on a law later this year that bans discussion of homosexuality and gender identity in public spaces. Much like Florida's Don't Say Gay bill, this will likely prevent teachers, just people in general relationships, from discussing the fact that they're in a relationship that's not straight. An amendment to the Romanian child protection law that was proposed by the Democratic Alliance of Hungarians in Romania, an ethnic minority party that is part of the ruling coalition, was inspired by a similar law which was adopted by Hungary in 2021 after being passed by the Senate in April and approved by Romanian Human Rights Commission. The bill needs the backing of the lower chamber of parliament. The way it looks at the moment, this bill is completely anti-democratic from many points of view, mainly because it hinders the freedom of expression and because it stands against all treaties, conventions, and international recommendations regarding LGBT rights, said Ionela Baluta, who participated in Saturday's Bucharest Pride to support the community and oppose the bill. Baluta, a professor at the Political Sciences facility in the University of Bucharest, with expertise in gender studies, political representation, and gender equality policies, is concerned about the ambiguous formulation of the bill. She thinks it could lead to consequences as far-reaching as gender studies being banned in universities and individuals being incriminated for posting information related to gender identity on their personal social media account. The European Parliament's LGBTI intergroup expressed their concerns about the bill in a statement urging members of the Romanian legislature to be clear and resolute in striking it down. Deeming it as another attempt to galvanize hatred in Romania, Mark Angel, the group's co-chair, added that this bill has no human rights compliance and serves no societal purpose but to ostracize further those who already discriminate. A similar law attempting to ban gender identity information in Romania's schools and universities was deemed unconstitutional by Romanian Constitutional Court in 2020 after being passed by the Senate and Parliament's lower chamber. So, which means Romania is more left-wing than some parts of American government. So, Russia proposes extending gay propaganda law to all adults. Under proposed changes to the law, any event or act regarded as an attempt to promote homosexuality could incur a fine. Sorry about that. Clearly I need water. Russian lawmakers have proposed extending a ban on the promotion of non-traditional sexual relationships among minors now include adults as well. Russia's existing gay propaganda law, passed in 2013, has been used to stop gay pride marches and detain LGBTQ rights activists. Under the proposed changes to the law, any event or act regarded as an attempt to promote homosexuality could incur a fine. Authorities say they are defending morality in the face of what they argue are un-Russian liberal values promoted by the West. Human rights activists say the law has been broadly applied to intimidate Russia LGBT. We generally extend the ban on such propaganda regardless of the age of the audience, offline, in the media, on the internet, social networks, and on cinema. The head of the State Duma's information, Alexander Kinstein, said on his Telegram social media on Monday. Social media. Russia's parliamentary speaker Vyacheslav Volodin said last week that since Russia had quit the Council of Europe human rights watchdog after invading Ukraine, it would now be able to ban the promotion of quote-unquote non-traditional values. Demands to legalize same-sex marriages in Russia are a thing of the past, Volodin said. Attempts to impose alien values on society have failed. Homosexuality was a criminal offense in Russia until 1993 and classed as a mental illness until President Vladimir Putin has aligned himself closely with the Orthodox Church, which rejects same-sex relationships, and has made its social conservatism part of a narrative of Russian cultural revival that is now being used to help justify invasion of Ukraine. New constitution enacted in 2020 that extended presidential term limit also defines marriage exclusively as the union of man and woman. 2 bar shootings leave 19 dead in South Africa. So, 2 bar shootings in the township close to Johannesburg and another in eastern South Africa has left 19 people dead. In Soweto, 15 people were killed as they enjoyed a night out, police said on Sunday, when a Villains drew up in a minibus taxi and began randomly firing at bar patrons. In the eastern city of Pietermaritzburg, police reported 4 were killed and 8 wounded during a shootout in a bar after 2 men fired discriminately at a customer. Police said it's too early to say the assaults were connected, but observed in their severity. It says that anyone who possesses a gun wants to try their gun on our community. Faith Masabu, member of the Executive Council. We wish to call upon community action, well indeed assist the police and the book those perpetrators. 12 were already dead with arrived on the 11 were in the hospital, died shortly. There were no details regarding the assailant. He's been arrested. They came and shot at people who were having fun. The bar was in the Ando district of Soweto, Johannesburg, largest township, southeast capital. According to Moala, a high caliber firearm used to randomly shoot people, licensed bar, and a number of the cartridges found the scene indicated it was a group of people who shot the patient. 4 killed in Pietermaritzburg in eastern South Africa shortly after. 12 shot, 2 player wet. The shooting came 2 weeks after 21 teenagers found dead in a tavern in the city of East London. The cause of this death has not yet been announced by authorities, but the teens were not shot nor crushed in the stampede. Sri Lanka protesters staying put until Prime Minister step down officially. Protesters in Sri Lanka capital Colombo continue to occupy the offices of the President and Prime Minister for a second consecutive day, vowing they will stay put until both have officially resigned, determined to see the country's top leaders step down. Amid an unprecedented economic crisis, thousands stormed the president's residence on Saturday and later set fire to the prime minister's house, forcing the two to hiding. Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe said he will leave office once a new government is in place, while Speaker of Parliament Mahinda Abawardena said President Gotabaya Rajapaksa would step down as president. The protesters are refusing to budge until they have officially left their post. Our struggle is not over, Lahiro Wirasakara told reporters on Sunday. We won't give up the struggle until he actually I am here because we have to explore what kind of things they have done with our tax money. Politicians understand the power of the people, said inside the president's residence. Ilan Kadir Gamar, a senior lecturer in the University of Jaffna, noted that protesters were backed by people across the whole country, which has been rocked by harsh economic conditions. Farmers not being able to cultivate, fishermen go to support for change. President and Prime Minister have been legitimate throughout the country. But yeah, so they're doing the thing again. African soccer player barred from tournament because her testosterone levels are too high. Barbara Branda, a cisgender woman, is being told her body disqualifies her from playing soccer. So, this is what happened with Caster Semenya, and this is what happens with black women are good at anything. It's almost like racism and trying to control women's body and delegitimize black women. All sorts of problematic stuff. So Barbara Banda, the 22-year-old captain of Zambia's national soccer team who competed in 2021 Tokyo Olympic Games, has been barred from competing in the African Cup of Nations tournament after a gender verification test determined her testosterone levels are too high. Banda is one of 4 players barred from Zambia's tournament after the testing. To hormone suppression treatment following the test, but her hormone had not reached sufficiently low levels to allow her to similar to that of Caster Semenya, a South African lesbian sprinter who was barred from competing over her high testosterone level. Test administered by the Confederation of African Football, the continental body that oversees the tournament, follows guidelines laid out by FIFA, the international governing body of This is all partially because of transphobia, partially sexism, partially racism. It's all sort of blended together. FIFA's gender verification policy states that androgenic hormones have performance effects, but doesn't specify the testosterone level allowed in gender. Last month, FIFA spokesperson said that FIFA is reviewing gender eligibility requirements in consultation with expert stakeholders. Some criticize World Athletics' role of undertones of European racism and imperialism. Black women's bodies have a long history of being considered too masculine by Eurocentric body standards. 2021, 2 18-year-old cisgender sprinters from Namibia, Christine Mumboma and Beatrice Vasily, were banned from running in the Olympic 400-meter dash because they have a natural high testosterone level. Others have criticized testing rules discriminatory against intersex athletes. Someone can have intersex people without identifying as intersex. Intersex people of all genders. It's unclear whether any of the women targeted by the ban identify as intersex. Yeah, it's a problem. So the DWP, the Department for Work and Pensions in Britain, actions in the case were described in the tribunal last week as not legally right and not morally right. Judge Claire Goodman was shown papers which demonstrated that DWP had made at least 61 errors in with the claim of Michael O'Sullivan. His death on the 24th of September 2013 led to questions being asked in the House of Commons 2 years later about linked suicides and the work capability assessment. Prime Minister David Cameron was twice asked about his death after Disability News Service covered a report showing that a coroner had written prevention of future deaths report that drew a clear link between the assessment and death. Since Michael Sullivan's death, his family has spent 9 years in a bid for DWP and its ministers, and senior civil servants to be held to account with the help of labor leader Keir Starmer and welfare rights leader. I would not expect much help from Keir Starmer, but despite his lawyering, was twice mistakenly placed on job seeking allowance and he had placed on JSA for the second time, and the department had been told that he had attempted suicide within days of being off long-term capacity benefits, placed on a training course where he constantly attacked, harassed, and by other much younger. In November 2020, he did find Michael fit for work wrong following time review of the way his claim had been dealt with. Dilworth told the hearing that was apologize for the family for forcing them to take the case to a tribunal, and whether the department accepted the judge's decision. The spokesperson said, "Our condolences remain." So no, sorry, I couldn't get a clear filling information. Labor refuses to make co-production pledge for new social care. So, Shadow Health and Social Secretary Wes Streeting announced this week that he had asked the Fabian Society, left of center think tank, to carry out an inquiry that would develop a roadmap towards National Care Service for England. Streeting said he wanted to see a National Care Service delivered on the same terms as the NHS, so it was publicly owned, publicly funded, and at the point of. But he also said that this could not be delivered in one parliament, just he could take more than a decade to scrap care charge. Disabled people and their organizations made clear this week that the inquiry must be co-produced by disabled. So sorry, I'm starting to get burnt out, so I apologize if the last few are a bit breakdown. Department of Work and Protection dismissed new research for the first time that brings together more than 30 years of evidence linked to systemic failings with the deaths of countless disabled people. That happened. UK airports and regulators are under pressure to act over the repeated discrimination faced by disabled air passengers after two prominent campaigners were failed by assistance services within 24 hours last week. So, UK airlines still awful. Campaigning to address suspicion, hatred in social housing sector. This is another complicated one that I don't know as much about, but the Disabled Housing Association tenants have launched a campaign. They hope will put widespread disability discrimination by their landlords and raise awareness of the Equality Act. So, politics reporter Matt Cole claimed that there were quote-unquote no gender-neutral toilets allowed at launch. Hosted at an office venue at Westminster, as Kemi Birch wanted to underline her point regarding fueled culture. So there were handwritten signs saying "men and ladies" taped to the door of gender-neutral toilet. So yeah, because apparently you can't have that gender-neutral toilet. We've got gay marriages and partnerships for the trans. Of course, this. Yeah. So, British triathlon will force trans women and non-binary athletes to compete against cis men because, of course, British triathlon believes that the discriminatory nature of their plan can be erased with some rebranding. They're going to call it open category instead of men's category. In the International Sports Organization's ban on trans competitors, British Triathlon has decided that the solution is rebranding. Trans women and non-binary athletes who are assigned male gender at birth will compete with cis men in one category labeled open, so they can fail every time and not be seen. While cis women and trans men and non-binary people assigned at birth will compete in the women category. Oh, this is terrible. Oh, this is terrible. British Triathlon's new policy, which goes into effect January 1st of 2023, will maintain this open category as separate from its female category, which only allows those who are the female sex at birth. The decision will affect all triathletes from England, Scotland, and Wales. Scotland needs to get to GTFO from the UK. Dear God. British Triathlon said it reached its decision after surveying over 3,000 group members, reviewing latest scientific studies, and holding discussions with grassroots and trans athletes. Reported 80% of the group members favored a women's category protected subset of women, that is, trans women. So, I'm guessing that they had 3,000 members, most of whom non-trans, and yeah, but 80% of the non-trans people that they talked with said, you know, need to protect people from the transit. Athletes who are born male have an advantage over athletes who are born female. That their advantage is significant in swim, bike, and run. British triathlon chief executive Andy Simmons said, according to The Guardian, "We've concluded that physiology advantages are attained after testosterone suppression, despite the evidence that disagrees." God, I hate all that. I'm not gonna get into how wrong they are. There have been plenty of videos that have done it. My friend did a video on it. There are tons of other videos that break down the reality. So, high rent and prejudice pushes people onto the streets of Brussels. So, a Romanian who's lived in Brussels for decades said that she had to sleep in the park multiple times because she couldn't find decent housing. When the mother of 3 found one apartment it lacked hot water or heating and she got sick several times. All I wanted was something basic that is clean and has no leak and a decent kitchen. Everyone wants a nice kitchen. Not necessarily the case, but sure. She wants one of an increasing number of Europeans who are struggling to find a decent home to rent or buy. Thanks to the local organization Rassemblement pour le droit Simona has now found a temporary rental in the neighborhood of Molenbeek near the center. Around 1/3 of people like her in Brussels now live below the poverty line, and housing market prices are only in. All landlords are best. Poor quality housing is rented more expensive than average quality. Project. Housing prices are spiking. Probably something happening. Premier League footballer arrested over alleged rape attack. An internationally renowned Premier League footballer has been arrested in London on suspicion of rape. The man, who cannot be named for legal reasons, was detained by police officers at an address in Barnet on Monday following the allegation. On the 4th of July, an allegation of rape of a woman in her 20s was reported to the Metropolitan Police for the alleged rape happening in 2022. Into the circumstances are ongoing. However, a new report by the Sun has provided further details about the arrest and against the player. According to the report, 6 police units outside swarmed the multi-million-pound mansion. I'm assuming she means kitchen nice enough to feed your family. Yeah, probably. I was being a bit harsh. So, disabled people only featured in 4% of UK TV ads in 2021, leaving a measly 1% of observed spots, despite around 22% of the UK population having some form of a disability, according to a damning report from Channel 4. Channel 4's audit of disabled representation in TV ads found that the cast was often older. Furthermore, ads were 5 times more likely to be fronted by a high-profile disabled sportsman, while there had been 1% in disabled representation in 2020. Channel 4 added a disclaimer that 2021 was a Paralympic year where such a fluctuation could be. Digging deeper into the research, mobility impairments were most commonly shown disabilities, shown 19% of ads with disabled people, followed by limb difference, percent hearing loss, and 5% neurodiversity, and mental health least represented, which Channel 4 attributed to those actual progress on improving representation has been too slow. It's time to supercharge our efforts, embrace the challenge, and put disabled in the hard work camp, said the revenue officer. Yeah, I mean, for everywhere. Woman told to fantasize about Jesus walking in on her with a lover in bizarre conversation. I have since spoken with men who have had their genitals anointed in rituals like this. I now consider that to be ritual abuse, Marina Forrestal reveals in a new documentary. altitude. Forrestal was a victim of conversion therapy by a local priest during the 1970s in Ireland. During her sessions with the anointed and berated Forrestal using the sacrament of the sick, and conversion therapy refers to any practice intended to turn an person cis or straight. Forrestal describes the treatment as ritual abuse conducted by the priest. Forrestal recounts in the documentary how she first met the priest that would eventually be her with first girlfriend in 1974. When we split, I was really lovesick. It by myself. Within my support group, actually, there was a priest who was supposed to have a gift of healing, and invited me sessions told me I should look at any because of the underwear. That wasn't all the priest would advise. He would then have Forrestal lie down in an altered state where he would advise her to do certain things. Got me to do these imagination things, where imagine I was in bed with the lover, and then Jesus came into the room, saw us together. He wanted to know, how did I think it felt? I probably shouldn't laugh at that. This situation of ritual abuse, but imagine you and I are together. I need to work. So imagine I am in love in a relationship with a lovely, and then I was told to imagine that Jesus walked in, and how I would think Jesus felt. The obvious answer that Jesus would be respectful and or want a threesome. When Forrestal told the priest that Jesus wouldn't have minded what she was doing, that's when things were suspicious. Now he said, if you're going to answer that size, still heartbroken. Forrestal trusted the. This is it's probably gonna get dark from here. So instead, I'm going to leave it there with the important imagery everybody needs, is Jesus walking in. It's dangerously close to King Father. The important imagery that is Jesus walking in when you are with your lover. Think about that long and hard. How Jesus, whether Jesus would or wouldn't accept your relationship and or join in. You need to think about this every day. It's super important. And with that news, with that, the news that that is the news that I have thought of and am interested in, and I can do the new stuff. So, if you're on YouTube, go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe. If you're new stuff that was mentioned. Otherwise, if you are on Twitch at the moment, as this is filmed initially on Twitch, I will be here after the show ending, and I will play some League and then hang out. So, if you want that... Oh yeah. Wait, does the trees thing not work in this? Oh yeah, no, because I haven't added it to the... I am so sorry. I haven't added the trees. Sorry, I haven't added the proper framework for that in Rainbow Shelter News. I should probably do that. You know what? I will do that as soon as I can. I am so sorry, Jinx Tiamat. I screwed that up. So I'm ruin your. I will make things better. Okay. Wait, wait, can't I just... Yeah, I'm gonna have to do that through other means later. So, have a wonderful day, everyone. Like I said, if you're on Twitch, I will still be on. So, pop in.
Justice is indivisible. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
Sex and race, because they are easy, visible differences, have been the primary ways of organizing human beings into superior and inferior groups, and into the cheap labor on which this system still depends.
No, you all tell me to go and hide my tail between my legs. I have been beaten. I have had my nose broken. I have been thrown in jail. I have lost my job. I have lost my apartment for gay liberation. And you all treat me this way? What the fuck's wrong with you all?
We want no more segregation. We will accept no more discussion of segregation. And I would appreciate it if you would stop shaking your head in agreement when I don't think you understand what we are talking about.
Freedom is merely privilege extended unless enjoyed by one and all.
All we are doing with this bill is allowing two people who love each other to have that love recognised by way of marriage. That is all we are doing.
I speak not for myself, but for those without voice can be heard. Those who have fought for their rights, their right to live in peace.
Sometimes, especially in this body, I feel as though if Christ himself walked through these doors and said what he said thousands of years ago, he would be maligned as a radical and rejected from these doors.